Good evening. This is More Than You Asked For podcast. You can hear I got a dog back just like we had the other day. He doesn't like me talking into a microphone with nobody here. So I have Atticus again. My parents are flying back down to Florida tomorrow to do more stuff for my uncle and everything. As you can see, we cannot see Trevor tonight. If those of you that do watch on the video on Spotify or on YouTube, his computer video is down, but that's all right. We'll be able to hear each other. Kind of main topics tonight, obviously the Big 12 championship with Iowa State. I'm wearing the sweatshirt I got down there. Bowl games, some transfer portal stuff, playoffs, and then a little bit of NFL. The Cowboys and the Bengals are tied right now at 17, and I think Burrow just threw a pick. So we're going to go from there. But first, I want to welcome Trevor in to this week's podcast. Welcome, Trev.
Good evening. Yeah, sorry you can't see me. It looks like there's a computer icon from what I can see. So maybe that's better looking than I am in real life anyway. So that maybe I'm doing the viewers a little favor here.
Yeah, there you go. Let's go ahead and let's get right to it. Iowa State really got boat raced. Arizona State's good, and Iowa State, I believe, played their worst game. So a combination of both things, and it turned out really bad for the Cyclones. And it's just another opportunity for the Cyclones. And I'm going to throw Iowa into this a little bit too, where you have the opportunity to get to the playoff. You have the opportunity to win a conference championship. You have an opportunity to show what you're made of on a national stage. And whether it's Iowa State in Sweet 16 basketball games, Iowa in Big Ten championship football games, or the NCAA tournament to get to a Sweet 16, or Iowa State now twice in the Big 12 title game, or bowl games against big-time teams, Clemson, Notre Dame. They don't rise to the occasion, and I was actually very disappointed in Iowa State. It was not a good game. I don't know if they weren't ready or if they just weren't ready or if Arizona State might be that good. That running back is really good. We wanted no part of him. There's some questions that have to be answered in the Iowa State football offices this week.
Yeah, for Iowa State specifically in that game, Scattaboo or Peekaboo, if you want to call him that, Iowa State, you're right. They wanted no part of him in that game. He was a monster. People brought up the Mike Allstock comparisons. It kind of reminded me of that. And he had some runs too where he was running backwards.
Oh, yeah.
7 or 8 yards a carry. So I don't even know if it would have mattered if Iowa State would have, tried to run a 4-4 going into the game or something instead of that 3-3-5. I don't think it would have made a difference.
No, I don't think so either. There were a few plays there where it got away from them is at the end of the first half. They forced a punt, first punt of the game. First punt we'd forced all day. And then we went 3 and out and took about 1 minute off the clock. We should have ran the football, made them use some timeouts, or ran out the clock closer. We had to punt it back to them. Scattaboo had another big run, and they scored a touchdown with a couple minutes left in the half. And then we have a big run to get to about midfield, and we just let the clock run out. And then we all know what happened in the first 3 drives of the second half where we turned it over, and it went from bad to worse. And, after that first drive, Iowa State, held them to a field goal, which is a win for the Cyclones. They usually let them score a touchdown first. And then, you go down and score relatively easily. It looked really good. And then you have, I believe on the next, and the order might be out here, but we had them 4th and 1, I think, near midfield. And they went for it, and they threw that long pass to almost, they didn't get a touchdown directly out of it, but it got to like the 3-yard line. And that was a big, big play as well.
Yeah, it felt like that play kind of created the snowball effect that happened in this game. The first half for the most part was somewhat close.
Right.
And then it just, like I said, it snowballed, and Iowa State couldn't recover from it. They get the ball back after half. You're thinking, here's a chance. If you can score a touchdown, going into the third quarter, you're right back in this thing. And then from that moment on, it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, I mean, 2 fumbles by Sama and then a pick off the helmet of, one of the linemen for Rocco. I'm going to pull something up on my phone here real quick. Might take me a minute here. But I had just a few thoughts here and some questions. One, Rocco seems to get lots and lots of balls tipped or knocked down at the line of scrimmage. Is it simply his height? I mean, he's not very big. Or is it some schematic, or is it the lineman just not keeping defensive linemen's hands down? I mean, I think obviously it's some of all three. I mean, we all know that. But as a impartial observer, what do you think is the biggest factor in him getting so many balls tipped or knocked down at the line of scrimmage? It seems to be 2 or 3 at every game.
I think it's a little bit to do with the throwing angle. Now, he's only 6'1", according to the depth chart, or depending where you look. I spoke about this years ago with Baker Mayfield. Baker used to have a ton of balls batted down in the NFL. Now, I don't watch as many of his games as I used to. He still may have that problem, but that is something for quarterbacks that are a little bit shorter, or their throwing platform, the ball just comes out a little bit too flat, and you get a bunch of those balls knocked down. So, yeah, he did have a few. They brought that up during the game, and that is another problem. If that's something they can work on going into next season, I would assume so, but I don't know how easy that is to fix, though, either.
Yeah, I don't either. Let me see if we can.
Yeah, ideally, you'd like your quarterbacks to be 6'4", 6'5", and then hopefully you don't really have those problems very often. But, yeah, for Rocco, it is something that I've started to notice. The broadcast brought it up. And, again, like I said, Baker's had that problem early in his career in the NFL, and some other short quarterbacks have as well.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't tell if I had it on here, I thought. I don't know, but I just had some other questions. And then 2, just the tackling. So that was number 1. And then, number 2, the receivers. Sometimes you just have to throw it to your guys. We had 2 studs, and I know they were trying to take them away, and they've done it. And this isn't just the Big 12 championship game. This is just in general. We didn't throw the ball downfield like we did at the beginning of the year when we were so successful. And I know teams started playing 2 high safeties over 1 high safety, but sometimes you just have to throw it up and let your guy go make a play. That's what the good teams do. That if you look at what the pros do, they just throw it up to their guy and say, hey, go get it. And, Noel's little, but Higgins is big, 6'3", 6'4". You got to just throw it to him and hope for the best.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed that they didn't give the receivers more opportunities. Those are
Right.
2 of the best players on the team. You thought they would have given them just some, maybe even some 50-50 balls like you're kind of talking about. But for whatever reason, they didn't. Obviously, yeah, like you said, when defenses start playing two safeties, it makes it a little bit tougher. But you almost have to take a chance here and there just to keep the defense honest. And especially when you start getting down like they were, that game was a weird one for Iowa State. I mean, it was competitive for briefly. It was competitive, and then Arizona State just ran away with that thing.
Yeah, Arizona State. I mean, they showed no doubt, and the final score was 45-19. It was actually worse than that. I mean, if you really want to get down to it, that game there was no. Once Iowa State turned it over those 3 times and didn't hold them to any field goals, it was 3 straight touchdowns. It was over, and it wasn't close. It's just a super disappointing day on – that's just not the stage that you want to play a bad football game. And Iowa State played bad. And it came out today on Pro Football Focus. The defense, besides Dominic Orange, he had a great day again. They played really, really bad. And our linebackers are so bad that it is pathetic and it's pitiful, and the tackling is god-awful. And I understand we have some guys hurt, but I truly believe it was some business decisions that these guys didn't want any part of. And I've not been as disappointed in Iowa State as I was on Saturday watching that game. It was not good.
No, it wasn't. And, Scadaboo had a couple runs early, and you thought, okay, that, he's going to have those.
Yeah.
You're not going to totally contain him. But then, in the back of your mind, you're kind of thinking, okay, Iowa State will get their head together. They'll make some business decisions, as you're talking about, and start at least attempting to make some better tackles. And it appears that they just, I don't want to say quit, but they wanted no part of him most of that game.
They wanted no part of hitting Scadaboo, or however you say it for sure. But and now he's really good, and he made them. And I thought their quarterback was a lot better than I thought. And they were missing their top receiver, but they brought a guy in that they were going to redshirt, but this game didn't count for redshirt, and bowl games don't count. So you can play these guys, and he was really good. And I think he caught 2 passes for like 45 yards, but 2 touchdowns. And just the offense, I mean, it was the field goal. A field goal was missed. It was just an all around, no part of the team was ready to go. And it was, I don't know if the rumors are that Saturday or Sunday, Campbell talked to North Carolina. I don't know if that was getting involved in this. I don't know if some of the players are looking around and seeing what could happen. And you're always worried about that this time of year. But they were playing for everything. The way everything worked out, I don't know if it's a close ball game. If Clemson would jump Iowa State in that situation, if they'd have won, but the way it worked out, there was a heck of a chance that you get a bye in the playoff and you're in the final 8. And Iowa State just looked like they were not ready to play. And I'm super disappointed in the effort of Iowa State from what I saw. And I know they're all saying they gave it. I don't think they did. That or the scheme was just that bad, or they got that bad outcoached. It was bad. It was bad.
Yeah, it sucks to make that long trip, and we're going to get into the positives of that trip here shortly. I want to let you speak on that, but in 2015, I made that trip to Indianapolis to go watch Iowa play Michigan State. Now that game was close, obviously.
Oh, that was a great football game. You weren't on the right side of it, but it went down to the wire. That was a heck of a football game.
Yeah, so that one wasn't. I mean, it sucked, but then part of the positive was the next day driving back. Me, Ty West, Al West, Taylor Howard, Matt Mish, we knew the Rose Bowl was a possibility, and then they announced it on the drive back. So we all made the decision, hey, we're going to go out to California.
Yep.
None of us had any money, but we're like, yeah, we're going to go and make a trip of it. And then, the past couple Big Ten championships where Iowa played in, where they basically, couldn't even get a first down. That's pretty tough, for Iowa State. Like I said, the first quarter and the first half in a way, it was somewhat close. But then, man, that second half, they had to make for a tough time and a tough drive back because, like you said, the effort just wasn't there, in my opinion.
I agree. And that's what disappoints me. Again, just like you just said, you got that Iowa game, you got beat at the end, 2 really good football teams, and it just didn't go your way. But this one team was fired up and ready to play, and one team looked flat, and that just disappoints me. Let's kind of get to the drive and just the travel part of it. A lot of driving in, really like a day and a half, 2 days. It's an easy drive. It's just right down the road. It's just a long ways. We got there about 1:30 Saturday morning. So it literally, got there and went to bed, woke up 7:30, 8 o'clock. I think we left our hotel like 8:45, went to Jerry World. And I will say that stadium is awesome. There is a difference in that stadium than college football stadiums. And it's super nice. Lots of bathrooms, concessions, there's lots of area. You don't feel congested. Like when you go to Iowa State, and I understand Iowa State Stadium was built in the 70s, and, this was built, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But just, it's apples to oranges. You can't even compare how nice, and everything's just ran super smooth. And also they know how to run it. This is a big time place. Now, one thing I will say, I was disappointed in the crowd. It was not very full. It wasn't, I wouldn't even say it was half full. And we could get into that. And I think going forward and just in general, I don't know how much of a crowd you're going to have at any of these, and how much. Now, these first round games that are on campus are going to be packed. Obviously, every season ticket holder is going to have it, and then you got the other team. But when you get to the Rose Bowl or in the Fiesta Bowl, and then the semifinal, and then the final, you think about Oregon, who's the number 1 seed. They would have had to go to Indianapolis, which is 2/3 of the way across the country. Then they're going to have to go to the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day, and then they're going to have to go to wherever it is for the semifinal, and then another place for the final, which is Atlanta. So it's all the way across the country. There's only so many dollars that everybody has, and there's only so many fans that could go to every single one of them. You have to pick and choose which games to go to and which ones not to. And I think these conference championships, now, Iowa State and Arizona State was a play-in game, so it mattered a lot. But that Oregon-Penn State game was not a play-in game. It was to get a bye. And especially going forward, I think they are going to – I think skipping the byes is going to be important. I think, every conference championship needs to be in, but I don't think they need a bye. And we can talk about that here in a little bit, but just Oregon's path is so much harder than Penn State's path. It's not even close. And I would say Texas's path is way easier than Georgia's. And they're the 2 teams that lost. But, kind of getting back to the travel, the stadium's awesome. The weather sucked. It was 42 degrees and rain the whole time down there. It didn't pour it wasn't like raining before the game, but it was, damp and misty. It was pretty cool. We went in relatively early. Obviously at an NFL stadium, you can get beer and stuff. So you bought beer. It wasn't way outlandish price. I paid way too much for a sweatshirt and stuff like that, but that's why you do this stuff. And it's fun. I've never been to that stadium, never been to the Big 12 championship. So it was awesome. And then afterwards, after the game, obviously you're defeated and this sucks or whatever. But much like the Power and Light, it's called Texas Live. Well, it was really nice. It was covered. So it had the big TV. And then right after the Iowa State game was the Texas game. So obviously a lot of Texas fans there. And then bars and restaurant, much like the Power and Light district, are all around there. And so we stayed there for the night, watched the Texas game kind of on the big screen in the middle. Then got a table and ate at the restaurant. That place is really attached to Globe Field, which is the Rangers. It's all right. It's kind of like Kansas City, where they're not next door as close to that, but it's all on the same property there. That was really nice. And so did that. And then we went back to the hotel. We were about 1.5 miles away. We did Uber just because the weather sucked. But you could have definitely walked it. And if it would have been, let's just say that if that stadium would have been jam-packed or like on a Cowboys, there are parking lots right across from our hotel for the stadium. So you would have just walked it. It would have been fine. But with the weather, and it was only, I think it was $12 to get home. And I think it was $5 to get there in the morning. So it was worth every dollar for that. And then watched a little bit of the game, and then I had plenty of beer that day, and I fell asleep really early. And then we got up, and I didn't even see the end of the Clemson game or the Penn State game. I fell asleep in the hotel, and then we got up and drove back. And obviously driving back always sucks, but a lot of people talked about how bad there's road construction essentially from Oklahoma City to Dallas. So that did suck. But we had a little bit of a heads up on Twitter. We had seen where Oklahoma City going back home, it was, like 4 hours to go 2 miles or something like that. And you could see it on your Google Maps where it was all red for a while right before Oklahoma City. So we actually went around it. And went off on a highway for a little bit, and I'm like, it didn't looked like it saved us a lot of time because I think by the time we got there, it wasn't that long of a wait. But you always feel better, at least when you're moving, instead of just sitting and going really slow, or at least I do. So even though we went out of the way a little bit, it wasn't too bad. And then obviously just going through Kansas and the Missouri and Iowa. And driving in Missouri and Iowa, you just drive so much slower than in Kansas and Oklahoma and Texas, where the speed limit is 75 mile an hour. And so you drive 83, 84 mile an hour, and you just go and you get past. And sometimes you go 85, and you just go from there. But yeah, driving 75 mile an hour when you've driven 85 mile an hour for 500 miles, it like, come on, let's go.
Yeah, that always sucks. It's like when you drive to Iowa City, on the way there, it's okay because you go through Watch Here and you start out slow and then you get on the interstate. But on the way back, it's the opposite, just like you're talking. So you go from speeding down to you feel like you're barely moving. But yeah, Dallas is an awesome area. We went when we were in college in 2009. We didn't go to the game, of course, but we went down for Super Bowl weekend between the Packers and the Steelers there in Jerry World. And we got stuck in Oklahoma for 9 hours because there was a big ice storm. So the weather does get bad down there. I think a lot of people don't realize that, but it's a really cool area. It's too bad it wasn't a touch warmer for you guys. Yep. You know, Fort Worth is not far away.
Right.
That's a cool spot to check out. You know, if you had more than just a day and a half, essentially.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what when I was obviously at Iowa State, we went down to TCU and played, I believe, or what. I can't remember. I've been to Fort Worth and we went out to the stockyards and stuff. I don't even remember when it was. And yeah, that's a fun area. And Arlington's kind of weird. It's kind of halfway between Fort Worth and Dallas. Mm-hmm. So it's if you would have had, like you said, better weather to walk around and go want to find things or win the game and want to have a little bit more fun. You know, that was another thing. It kind of just sucked getting your butt kicked. So, yeah, some of the things just didn't parlay yourself into just going absolutely crazy after the game, weather, and then also, just getting your butt kicked.
Yeah, I mean, that's the worst part is the day after, but, you got to make the trip because you don't know how many times that Iowa State's going to make it. Obviously, I mean, Iowa State's trending in the right direction under Campbell, but, this is the first time, like you said, 2020, the COVID year, a lot of fans couldn't go. So you got to take advantage of this. Even it's like when Iowa made the Rose Bowl in 2015, we went out there and they got killed by Stanford and Christian McCaffrey. Yeah. But the rest of the trip was awesome. We had an amazing time. It's just the game sucked.
Right. And, kind of the way it works out, I think I'm going to get to the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Not necessarily, I would not like normally go to that game. I wouldn't go if it was, but I'm actually just going to be in Florida. Like I said, my parents are flying out tomorrow, coming back Friday. But then we got to go down again to clean out my uncle's house and everything. And that was already the plan to do it over, Christmas break. And so now I think I'm going to fly out the 27th and then come back like the 31st or 1st. I haven't booked everything for sure yet. But so I do think I'm going to get to the game just because I'm going to be there and might as well.
No, yeah, that's good. I mean, that's a pretty big bowl game. Hopefully Miami, we'll get into who's playing, who's not.
Right.
It'd be nice if Cam Ward plays. But, yeah, if you're going to be down there, I mean, you may as well go to the game.
Right. That's what I was talking to my dad. My dad Paige had a choir concert tonight. My dad was there, and I'm like, well, I don't know exactly when we're going to be there, but I said I might as well fly in. They're driving with a truck. And then I'm like, well, I'm just going to fly down. I don't need to spend 4 days in a truck with my parents going down there. But they need help and stuff, loading and unloading and cleaning and stuff. I'm like, well, I'll meet you down there. And then I got to come back because I actually do have to work on Friday the 3rd. So I can't be there that whole nother week. So yeah, I think I'm going to go like Friday to Wednesday, Friday to Tuesday, depending on flight times and prices and everything.
Yeah, no, that'll be good. And, it's kind of funny. So will you be around Oski on the 20th and the 21st?
Yes. On the 20th, my actual birthday, I'm going to be in Indianola because we're doing Christmas that Friday evening. But then after that, I will be in Oski until the 27th or whatever day I fly out. I'll be around.
Well, I was just thinking we can kind of get into playoff talk here, but
Yeah.
that's going to be obviously the big weekend of the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be fun to get everybody together somewhere if we could and watch the games.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we need to do that and get as many people and get somewhere and watch all the games. And that Saturday is going to be crazy with the NFL games and the college football games. So we need 2 screens going for sure. And yeah, absolutely. We'll figure something out there. But yeah, I'll be around until like the 27th. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, and then speaking of the playoff, you and I had been kind of predicting what's going to happen, who's going to play what night or what day.
Yep.
So, like you and I called from day one.
Oh yeah,
Notre Dame's Friday night.
Yep, knew that was coming from them. Now that's what kind. So let's say Iowa State wins that game and they don't get the bye, and then the way it worked, Notre Dame went up to wasn't the 5 seed. They fell to the 7 actually, but that was the game I was worried about with, somehow if Iowa State was playing Notre Dame being Friday night, and that would have been really hard to get to. And I heard it's like $1,500 to get in that game on StubHub too.
Yeah, I've heard that too. It's like, I think last night or yesterday afternoon, it was like $1,250 for the cheapest ticket. And I'm sure it's going up, obviously. So
right.
Yeah, that's when I first saw Indiana at Notre Dame, I wasn't too excited, but there is kind of the factor that it's the in-state.
Yep.
2 teams from Indiana, so I am kind of looking forward to that one a little bit, actually.
Well, and we can just go ahead and kind of talk. The Indiana Notre Dame game. Yeah, it's not super flashy or anything, but yeah, like you said, it's in-state. They're the teams that don't play. Usually, Notre Dame plays Purdue way more than Indiana, and just Indiana. SMU, Clemson, they all have an opportunity. They're all double-digit underdogs, but every single one of them have an opportunity. And we talked about it. Chip in a chair. That's what you need. They have it. Would it completely shock you that Indiana beats Notre Dame? It would surprise me, but it wouldn't shock me. Notre Dame hasn't beaten anybody. Their best win is Texas A&M at the beginning of the year, and that was the first game of the year. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Indiana pulls the upset. And the whole bracket too. There's a lot to unpack here with the bracket, but no, I wouldn't be shocked if Indiana wins the game. Now I think Notre Dame's going to win, but
I do too. But it wouldn't like completely shock me. SMU and Penn State super intrigues me. I don't know about you, but what do you think of that one?
That one does more and more the more I thought about it. Again, when I first saw it come across the screen, I'm like, right. That doesn't seem that cool or that exciting. And Penn State, I think, is favored by 9 or 10, depending where you're looking. But it will be interesting to see how a team from Texas does in the cold. Now, that's the game that we thought would for sure be the Saturday night game. That's the Saturday early game.
Yep. Yeah, I think, and this is SMU's chance. No one's given SMU a chance. They think this is their chance to prove that they belong. And and we're going to see if James Franklin can win a big game. I mean, that's what it comes down to too. And they did not give them a night game. So it's not going to be a whiteout at night in Happy Valley. So we'll see, but this is SMU's chance.
Yeah, no, it totally is. And if you look at if SMU can win that game, I mean, SMU or Boise State technically will be in the Final Four. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of crazy how that goes. But that goes back to the seeding, which we'll get into here eventually, I know.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's get to the seeding a little bit. Let's talk about that Penn State SMU. That's 6 versus 11. And then obviously they're going to go to the 3, and the 3 seed went to Boise State. And I heard someone, I think it was Ken Miller or somebody on KXNO, or I don't know if it was Murph and Andy or the two Chris's show on Iowa Everywhere. One of those I listened to today said James Franklin should be fired if he doesn't get to the Final Four. Because he's going to be a big-time favorite in both games. He's playing the two least talented teams in the whole tournament. And he's got one of them at home, and then the other one's in the Fiesta Bowl, so it's not close to Boise either.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. I mean, James Franklin, he doesn't win the big games. We've talked about that on here many times. But, obviously the question is, it's the same thing with Ohio State, just on a different level is, okay, if you're going to fire the coach, who's the replacement going to be?
Right.
It's easy to say get rid of the coach. But it is an interesting point because, James Franklin doesn't win very many big games. Now, he beats the teams he's supposed to, which is always good. But, if you look at that SMU, Boise State, I mean, there's a real chance it could be Penn State versus Georgia or Notre Dame to go to the national title game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they have a really good chance. And, kind of speaking of Boise State playing the Fiesta Bowl, I don't know if they did that on purpose or just kind of worked out, but it's another situation where they punished Arizona State. There was an opportunity for them to play in the Fiesta Bowl right down the street. Instead, they sent them to Atlanta. And if Clemson pulls the upset on Texas, Clemson is just right down the road from Atlanta. So you're going to be the 4 seed playing in the backyard of the 12 seed.
Yeah, and Austin's a quick flight to Atlanta as well.
Right.
If Texas wins that game. I mean, either way.
Right. If you play Texas, it is what it is. Both of them are flights or a long drive. I mean, it's not. But Clemson's 2 hours from Atlanta, 3 hours at most.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody can get there. No one would take a flight. It's all a drive, and that would be a heck of a just kick to the nuts. And I think Arizona State has a chance. I was super impressed with them, and maybe Iowa State was just that bad. Not Arizona State will get to the playoff and get beat bad by whoever it is. But I don't know because Clemson doesn't have any. I mean, they got the SMU win. But other than that, they didn't have any big wins. And then Texas still has 0 big wins. Now, they've got 2 losses to Georgia, who's the number 2 team in the country. That's their 2 losses, but they haven't beat anybody that's ranked.
No, Texas has a lot of potential, which they have the talent. I mean, the recruits, we see all that.
Oh, yeah.
The NFL players that they're going to have, Arch Manning on the bench, all this stuff. It is interesting. I mean, look at Oregon, though. And this is why, and I think they will next year. I haven't heard of any restrictions why they couldn't, but Oregon has the toughest path early, at least, and they're the number 1 seed.
Yeah. So, I mean, just kind of going to the seat, Texas is 5 against 12. Clemson, and Clemson earned that right by beating SMU and winning the ACC, so they're in. But that's a big name. It's a big brand. But the 2 Texas and Penn State got easier draws, and they lost their championship games than Oregon and Georgia. Well, that's crazy. It was actually better for those teams to lose than to win. And that needs changed. And I know that would technically hurt probably the Big 12 and the ACC, but I think what should happen a little bit more like the NFL, where like Clemson and Arizona State, they don't deserve a bye. Like Clemson didn't. They were the 5th team, so they didn't get the bye. But like Arizona State and Boise State, you don't have to get a bye if you're the top 4 conference champion. You get those. You get a home game. So you're the 8th seed or the 7th seed or the 6th seed. So you get that home game, but you don't necessarily earn the bye. And I don't think that would be too hard to justify. And essentially what you need to do is seed it 1 through 12, which the committee, that's what they're supposed to do, is just rank the teams. And then if you have to manipulate it a little bit to get those conference champions a home game, that would be fine, but I don't think they deserve a bye.
No, I think everybody's on board with that. Everybody in the sports media that I've listened to, again, expanding on the playoff is great. It was needed, but there was going to be some flaws. This isn't perfect. but it is easy to see right now that, the conference champions should not get an automatic bye, like you said, sort of like the NFL style.
Right.
If you win the conference championship, then you make the playoff no matter what, but you can be seated anywhere.
Right. I mean, we see it in the NFL where the 12-5 wild card team is playing the 9-8 conference champion. Well, the NFC West is going to be that way. They're going to be just a couple games over 500, and the Vikings might be 13-3, 13-4, playing at San Francisco or at the Rams. I mean, that's kind of what it's leaning towards a little bit, which is really sad that the 49ers, if the Rams wouldn't have pulled that out against the Bills yesterday, which we can talk about here later, the 49ers will only be one game back, which is insane.
Yeah, I know. And Seattle won at Arizona, so that Seattle's in the driver's seat right now. But I think the last week of the season, it's Rams versus Seattle, which we'll get into the NFL here in a little bit. But that could be obviously a win and end type game. But I think most everybody that I've seen is under the same agreement. Like, the expanded playoff is awesome. We've needed this for a long time. That nobody's complained about that. It's just the seating's got to be different. And I think the committee realizes it. And again, unless there's some rule that they can't, I would assume they're going to change it for next year.
Yeah, the committee had a no-win situation. And that's what people don't understand. If they put SMU in, which they ended up doing, they valued playing in the conference championship, which I think should be. When you're the top two in your league, that's important. So they went with kind of the most deserving teams. But if you want the best 12 teams, then, I'm saying that wrong. If you put Alabama in over SMU, then you are devaluing a conference championship game. Mm-hmm. Because Alabama didn't play in a conference championship game, and because SMU did, they drop, and Alabama goes ahead of them just because SMU played an extra game. So that isn't right either. But if you want to go with the true best 12 teams, then you have to have that discussion. But I just don't think you can penalize teams for playing in a championship game.
No, that's really what it came down to. And the committee unintentionally put themselves in a tough spot because everybody was arguing over the same thing. Do you punish a team for making the conference championship and losing, as in SMU's case?
On a 56-yard field goal.
Right.
The time expired. And they made a heck of a comeback to get there.
I think one thing that helped is that Alabama had 3 losses instead of 2. Yep. If Alabama had 2 losses, they're in. I think we know that.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
So the committee kind of got built out in that way in a little bit. But I do agree with you. Teams shouldn't necessarily be punished for making a conference championship game and losing. But that was the big debate. Some people would say, well, no, they're not punished for making it. They're punished for losing the game. So, you got 2 sides of the argument there.
Yep.
But at least, again, as much as we want to argue about this stuff, at least we're arguing about 12 through 14 instead of 4 through 5 and 6.
Correct. More teams are in the tournament, and it's going to get bigger. And I want to applaud the committee. I do think they got it right. Now, you could argue seeds and things like that, and that's always going to be a little bit. And you and I have talked about this for a long time. This is a TV show. And to say that they didn't manipulate it a little bit to try to get some of these matchups, I don't believe it. But it is what it is. And I do think they got it right. I don't think Alabama should be in there. And I want it. I love Nick Saban. He does a great job. But Nick Saban and Alabama AD and Alabama coach talking about how they need to change their non-conference scheduling. They lost 3 conference games. They won their non-conference. It's not their non-conference that was the issue. They lost to a really good Tennessee team, which is fine. They lost to an okay Vanderbilt team, and they lost to a below okay Oklahoma team. All they had to do was split between Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, and you are in the playoff. You are 100% right. If they only have 2 losses, they're in the playoff over SMU, and then that ACC game would have been a play-in game, just like the Big 12. If Alabama has 2 losses or less, just like Notre Dame, those 2 teams are in every year if they have 2 losses or less.
Yeah, initially not feeling bad. That's the wrong word. I just think Alabama's probably one of the 12 most talented teams, but that doesn't matter. And then when the AD comes out and says we have to, rethink how we're going to schedule out of conference games. Your out of conference is the weakest that there is. They play Mercer and all these, these crappy teams that we see on the schedule that, people can't even tell you where they're looking.
They played at Wisconsin, which
they did this year at Wisconsin.
Wisconsin is one of those when it was scheduled, I'm sure Wisconsin was good, and they just ended up not being very good this year. So that is not Alabama's fault. Just like Notre Dame, when they schedule some of these teams, and when Texas went to Michigan, they thought Michigan would be better. I mean, it's just one of those, you can't predict what's going to happen. You can only do the best you can, and they're trying. But Alabama is not in because of is not in the tournament because of their non-conference. They're in because they lost 3 conference games, and 2 of them to mediocre teams, not even good teams. 1 to Tennessee, who's in the playoff, very good. Okay, you lose that one. That is fine. It's like Georgia. Georgia lost to teams. They lost to Alabama, who's a really good team. And then they lost to Ole Miss. They lost to 2 really good teams. That was the difference.
Yeah, I don't feel bad for Alabama. And I understand the AD has to do what they have to do. They're trying to protect themselves in the SEC. So I get the game that's being played. But, it's the old Judge Judy line, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. Mm-hmm. Like we can smell this BS from a mile away. So, Again, if they'd only lost if they'd only lost 2 games instead of 3, like you just mentioned, they'd be in.
Yep, absolutely, and they probably should be in. And again, I know the people that argue it should be the best 12 teams, but if you go by the best 12 teams, like according to Vegas, or the best 12 teams by talent, then ultimately you don't even have to play the game. Just go to Vegas, see who's favored, and then that's the 12 teams. And then that just comes back to who has the best players. But that doesn't mean they're going to win. If you go by that, then Notre Dame should have never lost to Northern Illinois. Alabama should have never lost to Oklahoma. Clemson shouldn't have lost to SMU. I mean, just, those are the games. If you're just going to go by who's supposed to win and who's favored and who has technically the best team, then there's no point in playing the games.
Agreed. Yeah, you can go by the rankings and all that type of stuff. And that stuff does matter to an extent, but you still do have to play the games. I mean, the games have to matter. And that's why I think the committee, as you mentioned earlier, made the right decision. These conference championship games need to matter. So SMU making it and losing, they weren't punished for that severely, which I agree with. They lost the conference championship game, but they're still in the playoff.
Yep. And, if Iowa State was in that situation where they only had the 1 loss, say they would have pulled out that Texas Tech game and only had the loss to Kansas and then lost to Arizona State, there would have been some arguments there. I don't think you would have won those arguments, but with 1 loss going in and then you losing a conference championship, an extra game, Iowa State would have been in that argument on how much does that second loss hurt. They definitely would have been in that conversation.
Yeah, no, they absolutely would have been. And what's crazy to think about, we did our predictions before the year, and I think mine were terrible looking back on it. But I don't think either of us would have thought only 3 SEC teams would have made it.
Yeah, it's just it kind of what happened. The same thing in the Big. They kind of feasted on each other a little bit. Ole Miss lost to Florida when they shouldn't have. Alabama lost to Oklahoma and they shouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Florida actually had a pretty good year. They had the hardest schedule in the history of the world. Vanderbilt won some games they weren't supposed to. South Carolina had their opportunities, and they could have been in that mix if they had pulled out that LSU game or the Alabama game, which they should have maybe done one of those. And
yeah, I think I saw the bowl game that South Carolina went to. That bowl chose South Carolina over Alabama. South Carolina was the first.
Are they going to the Citrus Bowl? They're in Orlando.
Whatever one. You know what? You know what's funny is I sat around yesterday and I watched all 4 hours of that show. I wasn't paying attention. I was on my phone and stuff, but I was constantly refreshing the CBS bowl game announcements. And, it was weird because you get a bunch announced at once and then it'd take a while. But yeah. I saw some tweet. I don't know if it's true or not, but South Carolina was the first pick over Alabama for the bowl selections.
Oh, definitely could have been. Yeah, Iowa State, I think the Alamo Bowl picked first in the Big 12, and they had already kind of committed to Colorado, I believe, and then they chose BYU over Iowa State. That was, I don't know why or where, and then Iowa State went, which, Miami, and that we're talking kind of, Miami was one of those teams that is arguing should have been. They only had 2 losses, and they were the second team out. Alabama was the first team out. Miami was the second team out. So let's transition to Iowa State bowl games. Iowa State's they're doing it again. They're playing a big time name in a pretty good bowl, one of the more fun bowls, if they're going to kind of do the same thing they did last year, I'm sure, where the live mascot's going to get toasted and if you win, you get to eat the mascot as a Pop-Tart. So they're making a joke out of it, but it's fun. That's what these are exhibitions. We're going to see. I would expect Cam Ward to not play. He's going to be a top 5 draft pick, maybe top 10 at worst. And if I was advising him, I'd tell him not to play, but he's got to make his own decisions. But it's a big time name. This is the 3rd time in 5 years Iowa State's been in this bowl. They played Notre Dame and they played Clemson, and now they play Miami. That's 3 really big games. Names, and then obviously they played Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl that year. But it comes down to, again, Iowa State needs to play better in these games. They haven't won any of these games. Matt Campbell needs to figure out something and do things a little bit different to get his teams more ready to play against these. And maybe they're just not as good as we think, and when they get against these better teams, they're just not as good.
Well, for Iowa State, it's going to be a pride game.
Yep.
That's what it's going to come down to. And, how many players are going to play for each team, we'll wait and see. More announcements are going to come out. Cam Ward, I agree with you. He probably shouldn't play in the game, but I've talked to you about, there's old school NFL GMs. The one position they don't like to see sitting out bowl games is quarterback. You're supposed to be the leader of the team. Will it drop him out of the top 10? Of course not. Probably not, because teams are desperate for quarterbacks.
Right.
But there will be teams that don't like that per se. Yeah, for Iowa State, it's another big team that they're going to face. Miami, that's a blue blood school throughout our lifetime. It'd be nice to see them show up and try to get a victory here in that one.
Yeah, they just need to play better in these positions. That's what's kind of been disappointing is in a lot of these games, going back to 2020, they got way down to Oklahoma and made a rally to make it close and had the ball with a couple minutes left with a chance to win. Brock Purdy threw an interception, but when you're trying to make a play with a couple minutes left, things happen. It's okay. Notre Dame, that they got physically manhandled, and then Clemson, I think they got down again and started making a rally, and then Purdy had that kind of weird play where he tried to tip it down, but it went up and intercepted and kind of went down from there. But overall, I think the game, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I think the score ended up pretty close. And then, like last year, Liberty, the Liberty Bowl, Memphis put it to them pretty good. this Big 12 championship. They lost the Washington State game close in the Alamo Bowl in 18. So Campbell's not done real good in bowl games. He's won a couple, but then the other thing is he's been to 7 bowl games in 9 years, which is really, really good for Iowa State. And all you can ask for is just more opportunities, and he's giving us that. And from all indications, I mean, I think there's everybody has that job or two they would like, and he hasn't found that job yet. And so he's been committed to Iowa State and staying to it. And from, rumors and everything that he had another opportunity this year, at least you don't know if he's going to get it, but at least maybe pursue that North Carolina job. And from everything I've been told is he just told him no, essentially about right from the start.
Yeah, North Carolina feels like it'd be a little bit weird, but couldn't blame him if he took it. I think the interesting part for me, I can't speak for you or anybody else, but again, yesterday sitting around watching the selection show, and then I actually was excited for the bowl announcements for whatever reason. Maybe it was young sports fan in me coming out, but I was excited to see where all these teams were playing. Specifically Iowa and Iowa State. I don't know if you listened to any of that on the drive back or anything.
We watched the the actual selection committee, the picks, and then kind of we watched it for a little bit on my direct Dish Network app in the middle of Oklahoma or wherever we were when it was going on. So yeah, we did, and then I didn't really listen to too much. I knew they were just gonna Saban was just gonna keep talking about Alabama and why they should have been in there and everything, and so I turned it off. But then you just follow it on Twitter and Facebook, and you get messages and everything. So I didn't watch it too much. Now, this is one thing that is interesting, and a couple things. I don't know how well you can do. Remember when you do the bowl pools and you had to do the confidence picks or whatever, where you rated them 1 through 30 or whatever? There's no way you can do that now with not knowing who is playing and the opt-outs coming all the way up until game time. And then the other thing is, I know it's not a lot of games, but are people going to have the playoff pools, kind of like the NCAA tournament? Now, obviously, it's not near as many games, but you could put it's still 11 games. So, the separation is going to be out. But if you give lots and lots of points to championship, as long as it doesn't go chalk, you're gonna find a champion. That'd be kind of fun to do. I don't know, kind of something that I hadn't thought of until I was hearing some people talk about it today. That are you going to fill out a bracket? Well, I don't know. I hadn't thought about it.
I did. I filled out a bracket last night actually on ESPN. They had the free ones.
Did they do it one?
Yep. Yeah, I don't even know if there's a prize. I assume there is, but I just saw it because I was checking my fantasy football team, and I saw the college football playoff, whatever the heck they called it,
Right.
So I clicked on it. I was like, all right, I filled it out real quick. So yeah, I think that's going to become a thing as well.
Yeah, it's not a lot of games, so it's not like the NCAA basketball tournament, but it's still kind of fun, especially if you get some upsets. Do you think I think there will be at least one upset in that first round, don't you?
Yeah, I think Tennessee's very live. I think Clemson is as well. The two that, and I mean, they're all live. I almost wonder if we could get a weird, I know I mentioned this a week or two ago to you. Could we see Notre Dame versus Tennessee or something crazy like that in the national title game?
Yeah.
Just because teams knock each other off, and it's, again, teams don't have the depth like they thought. But I'm automatically penciling in Penn State for a victory. So that probably tells you should take SMU. But I think Indiana's live. I think Tennessee, of course, is. That's an 8-9. And I think, I sent that text to the chat last night. Clemson's 50-1 or 60-1 to win the national title. If you're a betting person, I think that's worth $3 or $4.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Dabo, I mean, obviously the 12-team playoff is new to everybody. But Dabo has won a national championship. There's not very many coaches left. Him and Kirby are it, right?
Yep, that's it.
And they both have multiple. And he knows how to win playoff games against good teams. And they haven't been as good, and some of it's because they haven't done the portal, but they still recruit high school kids as good as anybody. They're always top 5 or 10. So they've got talent. They just don't have the transfer talent that a lot of these teams have went and got.
No, yeah, Clemson is definitely a dangerous team because of the experience. And another thing that someone brought up today, I think it was, is that the home teams have all the pressure.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like the NFL playoffs now, and I almost texted you that earlier today. So I'm gonna kind of treat this college football playoff, at least the opening round, like I would the NFL playoffs. Who's got momentum?
Yep.
Who's got pressure? Who's fading? Who's trending in the right direction? Like Ohio State. I mean, if Tennessee gets up early, 1 or 2 scores, that stadium's going to be booing Ryan Day out of there.
Yeah. So let's go through the first round. So obviously Clemson's only won 1 in a row because they lost to South Carolina, and Texas lost their last game. So there's no streaks there. And then you've got 10. How many has Tennessee won in a row? They've got a chance. Obviously Ohio State's only won. Well, they actually won 0 in a row because they lost to Michigan.
Tennessee's just won 2 in a row. I mean, they've UTEP and Vanderbilt, so that's not saying much.
Right. And then Penn State lost their last game. SMU lost their last game. Notre Dame's won 11 or 8 in a row. And then Indiana's won 1 in a row. So there's not a lot of streaks. And then you go to the next one. Boise State. Was Oregon their first game or not?
Oregon was either their first or second, I believe.
Yeah, so they won a bunch in a row.
True.
Georgia hasn't won. Well, they might actually. They lost to Ole Miss 3 weeks ago. So they've won 2 or 3 in a row. Oregon obviously is undefeated, so they've won 12 in a row. And then Arizona State's won 6 in a row. I think Arizona State has a chance, I think, because they run the football. And then just enough passing to you have to just sell out. And then if they can do what they did against Iowa State, throwing the football, it makes it impossible.
Yeah, no, Arizona State's got a chance because, like you said, they could run the ball, and whoever they end up playing,
right,
that team's going to have to make a decision. Do we want to tackle that running back or not? So what I'm hoping for and what I think is going to happen is we're going to see at least a couple – I'm not saying in the first round, but through the first 2 rounds, we're going to see at least 2 upsets, I bet. Because, again, these teams can't hoard players on their depth chart like they used to be able to. And that's one of the good consequences of this whole change in college football. Now, there's some bads too, but this is one of the good ones.
Yeah, just like, Iowa State, J.J. Cole, the Ankeny kid, he got beat out by Rocco Becht, and now, Connor Mobley had passed him too. He went in the transfer portal today, and that's just a kid you can't blame. But next year at this time, if 2 quarterbacks get hurt, you really wish you had him, but you're not going to. And that's just reality now. Iowa State's bringing in a really good quarterback from Algona. I get, but he's a high school. You don't know that, but he's highly ranked. But he got hurt this year, and I don't know what his status would be to play next year. I don't know what he hurt, actually, for sure. I think it was his arm or elbow. And I know I'm pretty sure he had surgery and didn't play towards the end of the season. But you're going to have to go with the true freshman instead of a guy that's been in the program for a couple of years.
Yeah, I've said this 1,000 times, but I'm really looking forward to this playoff and then the playoffs in the coming years because we know it's going to expand. To what number they go to, I don't know. But again, this teams don't have the depth like they used to, and that's making this expanding. It makes it more fun, and then the top dogs not having the depth makes it even more fun because we are going to see upsets. And like I said, who knows? Maybe we could get it Notre Dame versus Tennessee or something weird that nobody expects.
That would be, if Oregon doesn't make it, I'm just going to say one of these 3 teams. If Oregon, Ohio State, or Georgia are not in the final, Now, obviously, Oregon and Ohio State, only one of them can be in the final just because they're going to have to play each other. But if one of those three teams is not in the final, it would be a surprise, and it'd be fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the 12 teams, I'd be okay with Georgia, Ohio State, and Clemson not making it. The other 9, even Texas, like I'm okay with the other 9.
Yeah. Texas hasn't won anything really since 2005. That's a long time ago. That's almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So here's what's funny. So January 4th, Iowa State basketball is playing Baylor, and we're going to go to the game. And they're celebrating the 25th anniversary of the 2000 team that went to the Elite Eight. How old am I? I wasn't even a freshman in college. I was a junior in college.
Time flies. When you look back at that team that you're talking about there, you look back at the Vince Young Texas team,
right,
or the Boise State team that shocked Oklahoma with Adrian Peterson.
Yep.
It doesn't seem like that long ago, but it's going quick, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I heard that they were talking about it Sunday evening. Iowa State played Jackson State at 5, and obviously we were driving, so I turned on the radio and was listening to that. And John, they were talking about that where, they're going to have the reunion and everything in 25 years, because it's going to be 2025 and craziness.
Yeah, no, it is. But this has been a fun college football season. I think they say it's the highest rated of all time. It depends on what numbers you look at, I guess.
Yep.
It feels like they say that about everything nowadays anymore. Yeah. But this college season has been a lot of fun. And again, the expanded playoff is amazing. Iowa State fell a little bit short, but this gives hope for a lot of teams moving forward.
Yeah, just the ending. You got to think like Iowa State. They're 10-3, very, very good season, but in their last 6 games, they're only 3-3. So it's a little bit, disheartening. What could have been, what should have been. That's what's heartbreaking. It's not. 10 wins is awesome. Playing a conference championship is awesome, but it's just another kick to the stones for Iowa State fans and not capitalizing on opportunities that are presented itself.
No, fell a little bit short of the ultimate goal, but this should be good for recruiting, obviously.
Yeah, and that's
10-win season and all that stuff you just mentioned. You would hope, assuming Campbell stays, which I think he will, this will bring in better recruits for the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, that's what you want to see. And today's portal opened. Brent Bloom and the We Will Collective and Derek Hoodger, who's kind of the player personnel guy, whatever, and Coach Campbell, they've got to figure out, and these guys are super smart, how much to pay each player. Obviously players are going to have opportunities to leave. But then you got to go get players too, and how much are you willing to pay those players? And it's much more like an NFL where you've got to have a general manager and you have to have a budget and a salary that you're willing to pay your players and salaries per position. And because Iowa State needs cornerbacks, they need receivers. And then everybody needs defensive linemen. That's just an offensive lineman. And then I would say you need linebackers. Now, the flip side of that is some of the problem with the linebackers are just because they were all hurt and the guys that were playing should not have been playing. That's the reality of the situation of the injury bug with the linebackers this year. So maybe you don't need linebackers, because the guys playing this year won't play next year because they're not as good, but at least they got valuable experience. So if you could play them 15 snaps a game, they're probably okay, but you can't ask them to play 40.
College is turning more and more into the NFL. We've talked about that, and I think right now for coaches specifically, the NFL is way more attractive than college at the moment because
there's rules
the
in the NFL.
There's rules. Everything's black and white. There's a trade deadline. Yep. There's free agency deadline. There's the draft, and
there's
the playoffs
tampering.
Too.
Yeah, there's no tampering, and then there's a tamper. Yeah,
playoffs are black and white. You either have enough wins to make it or you don't.
Right. Yeah. There's no committee selecting it. It's true. It's just math.
So I think college will get stuff figured out, but it's going to take a few years. And we're seeing the good and the bad. We've talked about every week. There's good and bad to it all.
Yep.
Eventually, college will look a lot more like the NFL. Again, we're talking about GMs coming in and managing, the quote unquote cap for all these colleges and their budgets. That stuff's all going to get figured out, but it is going to take a few years, though.
What do you think of Belichick realistic possibilities in taking that North Carolina job?
When I first saw it, I thought it was a joke. Not a joke, but I thought he was just doing it to get his name out there type of deal. Not that he really needs to, I guess. But then you also saw the rumor coming out that his son would be the coach in waiting.
So that's why he's going to do it. That's why he's going to do it. I think he takes the job.
It's getting reported every day. So I think he's only like, I don't have it written down, but I think he's like 17 or 18 wins in the NFL away from the regular season all-time win record. And I would have thought he would have wanted that. And I wouldn't have blamed him. He deserves it. If there's any coach that deserves to hang around for a record, quote unquote, it's Bill Belichick. But maybe, I don't know, maybe who knows, the Jordan brand, his son can have the job after, his son would probably never get an NFL job just because I don't know why, but probably wouldn't. But maybe this is an opportunity for him to kind of just help his son out in a way.
Yeah, and if you're in North Carolina, do you just agree to this to try to get the name? And like you said, college is so much more like the NFL that it's not as big of a difference as it used to be. He knows how to run a team. He knows how to deal with the salary cap. He knows how to run a team on a salary, and that's what college football is now. The Cowboys are going to cowboy this away. Are you watching this?
No, I'm at a hotel actually near Denver Airport, so I'm just unfortunately all I've got to look at is you.
That's really bad. I feel sorry for you.
I wasn't too interested in this game tonight anyway, to be honest.
Well, here's what just happened. There's 53 seconds now. The Cowboys are down 7. They have the ball at the 45-yard line, so they've got a chance here. I mean, it's not over, but Cincinnati went to punt. Denver blocked it, but it went forward, and Denver touched it, and Cincinnati picked it up and kept the possession. And then they missed a tackle, and Jamar Chase went for a touchdown. They blocked a punt and then messed up the blocked punt, and Cincinnati still kept the ball. That's how bad things are going for Denver.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to see the replay of that on SportsCenter. I assume
they just got sacked. Essentially, it's they got timeouts. So. But yeah, they're gonna have a chance here. But yeah, another way for. The other thing that's weird, that just on Saturday morning, Iowa State, Arizona State, different signage, different paint on the field and everything, Big 12 all over, and now it's all back to Cowboy stuff.
Yeah, they can get that changed in a hurry, can't they? I mean, it is kind of crazy to think that they can, play a game one day and then the next day everything is gone, all the colors and the wording and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously, it was the Dr. Pepper Big 12 championship, and so Dr. Pepper was everywhere. And, yeah, I'm sure by Saturday night it was all ready to go for this game.
I'd have to assume so. I don't think Jerry would be paying all this money for any lackadaisical work going on.
No.
He probably wants it done right away. So, yeah, we could probably transition to some NFL if you want.
Yep, I think we go ahead and do that. Chiefs with another last-second doink win. Team of destiny, or are they running out of things? But as we both said, as long as number 15 is their starting quarterback, they got a chance.
Yeah, that was a great game last night. And it's week in and week out. So I'm probably like a broken record, but everybody's getting tired of them. But they just find a way. This is their third kicker on the year, and good teams find a way. It was a doink, but it did go in. So, and again, if you give Patrick Mahomes the ball back at the end of a game with enough time to get down the field, what's he do? He gets down the field.
Yeah.
So
every time.
Every single time. I mean, that's if you're now this game played out a little bit differently. I wouldn't say it was necessarily the Chargers' fault. Sometimes the game just does that, but we're going to talk about a team or a couple teams coming up, the Lions in particular, who I think have the guts to look like fools, but the guts to try to win the game versus Chiefs, unlike other teams. Not that other teams aren't trying to win, but the Lions will be aggressive about it.
Well, and that's what the Bills did to beat the Chiefs,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
They went for it and made it. And Dan Campbell and the Lions will do the same thing, and they'll do it all day. It's not even just on the situation to do it at the end of the game like the Bills did. They'll do it all day.
Yeah, the Lions game Thursday night, that one was a little bit weird. They had 13 guys on IR, and they played another 19 guys on defense. So I was really kind of surprised about how many sports analysts out there were surprised that they went for it on 4 so often. They had no defense. Now, what they did in the first half was actually pretty impressive. But going in the second half, their defense couldn't stop nothing. I mean, they were run out of gas. They were run out of bodies. So the fact that they went for it on 4th all the time really did surprise me. But I was surprised about how many people were so upset about it. I mean, smart football people did not like it at all.
Yeah.
And the one thing I keep seeing is, well, Dan Campbell's going to cost the Lions in a playoff game. You know, he's their weakness. Well, let me ask you this. What's the Ravens' weakness? Their secondary, penalties, their kicker.
I would say Lamar Jackson.
Or Lamar, yeah, he shrinks in playoff games. What's the Chiefs? If the Chiefs don't three-peat, what's going to probably be the reason why? Probably their offensive tackles.
Yeah.
So every team's got a weakness or a reason why they may not win the championship. The difference is the Lions' reason is just different. We're just not used to seeing it. And it's not even necessarily a weakness. It could be a strength. Everyone's like, well, he's going to lose them a playoff game. Well, that 4th down stuff might win them a playoff game.
Yeah. It can go both ways.
Exactly. So it's not necessarily a weakness. And again, I don't think he's going to go for it on 4th down in the playoffs like he did in that game versus the Packers. They didn't have anybody to play.
Right.
So that was a little bit different. But I people I've known for years were getting kicked off message boards, getting in arguments about it. I mean, it was quite something to see. I mean, people on TV were very upset. It surprised me. I mean, it's something we haven't seen before, and people don't know what to think of it.
Yeah, he's just so different, and he's fun to listen to and fun to watch. And you know, he drinks the 2 double grande, like 87 milligrams of caffeine in the mornings, and he looks like he could still play and beat up half his team because he's just a huge individual. And I still come back to when he got hired and he made the joke, and this isn't the Campbell you were looking for, because a lot of people thought that Matt Campbell was going to get that job, and they hired Dan Campbell, and he made the joke right away. I mean, right as soon as he walked into that first press conference.
Yeah, he's changed that place entirely. So I don't know. To me, I think people just aren't used to seeing a team play that way, which confuses people. I mean, old school football guys don't like to see it, but I almost think there's something admirable about it. You know, look at the NBA, these guys that get paid $100 million+ contracts, and they don't play a single game, hardly ever. Isn't there something to be said about playing to win the game?
Absolutely. Have you seen that thing all over the internet? And I it's so true that the 49ers receiver, Ricky Purcell or something like that, got shot like in August, right before the season. And he's played in 5 games in 2024 this fall. And he got shot in the chest.
Mm-hmm.
And Embiid, sore knees, has played 4 games. I mean, it's ridiculous. The NBA, I don't know how people watch the NBA. And I know people are going to maybe not be happy. I don't understand how you can support players not playing ever. I don't get it.
I agree with you. I watched opening night when the Lakers played, which was actually a pretty entertaining game a couple months ago, or whatever the heck it was now at this point. I've watched some brief moments of the NBA, but I'm fading now. Now I don't even care because the stars don't play. And there is something to be said about, the NFL and NHL and some of these other sports where you kind of have to play or your team's not going to respect you. Like you need to be out there on the court or the field. And the NBA is just pandered to their stars so much that it's tough to watch. Yeah. I mean, even the playoffs are tough to watch at times.
There's guys that have taken playoff games off. I mean, I don't understand how it's like soccer. Like they look like they're going to die and then they run back in there in 4 minutes. I mean, it's like, what the heck is going on? And they just, Kawhi Leonard never plays. Embiid never plays. LeBron takes a lot. Now, LeBron did not take all these days off when he was 27 years old. I get it. Right. He's 40, whatever, and he's been in the league since he was 18 years old. So I understand him a little bit because he is 40-some years old. But Embiid is 30, maybe?
Ben Simmons.
Yeah. I just – and good for them, though, a little bit. Heck, you can get paid to not play. What the heck? Good for them.
Yeah, and that's the problem with having, everybody makes fun of the NFL Shield and Roger Goodell. And I've told you many times.
Yeah, they just cut them. They don't care.
Goodell's a punching bag, but the NFL, players, for the most part, they play on Sunday.
Well, the difference in the NFL and everybody else is these contracts aren't guaranteed.
That's another point too. Yep.
That's the difference in the NFL compared to all these others is your signing bonus, and there is some guaranteed money in all these contracts. But when you see it's 8 years for $150 million or whatever it is, guaranteed might only be $60 million. So they're guaranteed that, but if they get cut tomorrow, that other $100 million they're done. When the NBA guy signs for 8 years, $160 million, he gets $160 million, no matter what.
Yeah, and that's a problem in itself. I mean, we saw the MLB contract that just came out yesterday.
Yeah, 15 years, $786 million, over $750 million.
It's the years that I have a problem with. And again, I don't quite understand how MLB works compared to the NFL, but I would have to assume 15 years, in about 5 years, the Mets are going to start regretting this contract.
Yeah. He is only like 25 years old. So
okay, I thought he was 28.
Well, maybe. He's not very old because when he won the title with the Rangers, that
would make sense if they gave him a 15-year deal then.
Because when he won the title with the Rangers, he was only like 19 or 20.
Either way, 15's
it's a lot. And he could get hurt and be done next year. Now, understand if he gets hurt and can't play anymore, there's insurance and there's things where you don't get paid. I mean, there's reasons that you wouldn't pay that, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy the amount of money and everything that all these guys get.
And the reason they get it is because we're all watching.
Yeah, and that's kind of getting back to the college football playoff. We're all kind of bitching and moaning and complaining maybe a little bit now, but guess what's going to happen on December 20th and December 21st and December 31st and January 1st and January 9th and January 20th? There's going to be millions and millions and millions of people watching that game. And we're going to be...
We're all going to watch.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. We're all going to tune in, and it'll be the highest rated college games of all time and all this. Yep. And that's the reason why. But yeah, no, for I think we had one more NFL. Did you watch the Rams Bills game last night?
I did not. We got home at I got home probably like 8:30 last night, and so I didn't watch any NFL. Yeah, I just saw it was 44-42. I just heard it was just unbelievable and just craziness, and yeah, what all happened in that game?
Well, a lot happened. Josh Allen went into Superman mode. He scored 6 touchdowns, 3
Right.
passing, 3 rushing. I've told you
Yeah.
before the season started, he's going to probably retire top 10 all time or maybe top 5 in rushing touchdowns
Yep.
if his career continues down the average that he's been doing. The Bills had some time management stuff that Brady brought up in real time, which I thought was smart. They tried rushing the ball instead of just throwing it. It probably ended up costing. Now, if they would have got the ball back with time anyway, it would have been tough. But that's why I've said for a couple years now, I think Josh Allen's the most talented quarterback I've ever seen play the position. Not the best. He doesn't have the accolades. Doesn't mean he's ever going to be, one of the top 5 of all time. But I think he's the most talented I've ever seen play.
Yeah, he's an unbelievable athlete, and what he does running just as much passing is what separates him. And it's different than like Lamar Jackson. It's just a different type of playing quarterback.
Yeah, Josh will just run you over. And then,
Right.
Occasionally he'll catch a touchdown too. Like he did a couple weeks ago. He had that crazy play. I mean, that was probably that was one of the games of the year. I think that one, and then honestly, the Lions and Packers on Thursday night, those are 2 of the best 5 games we've had all year on the same weekend or the same week of schedule, I should say. So the playoffs are amping up. I mean, the Vikings are coming rolling. They were team fading, not fading, but I've been reluctant to buy into for a long time. The Vikings are good. If Darnold can keep this up, I mean, maybe they are a legit team.
Yeah, it's just different. And yeah, the Vikings, and how much is Sam Darnold going to get in free agency? Or is there any way the Vikings keep him?
I don't know if they can franchise him, but I think he's going to get about 40 to 50 million a year on the open market. It'd probably be a 3-year deal.
That's crazy.
So whoever he signs with, I don't, the Jets need a quarterback, but he's not going back there. I wouldn't think that would just be weird.
That would be but it would be a little bit, but they're going to have a new coach. They're going to have so it's going to be the owner's the same, but everybody else is different.
And then the Giants need a quarterback, but does he want to go back to New York in general?
Right.
Or do the Vikings offer him just like a 1-year massive deal
right
to stay and then let the rookie heal up from his injury? But you got to remember they also brought in Daniel Jones. So not that Daniel Jones is going to be a franchise guy, but if you needed to start Daniel Jones for 1 year, I guess you could.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you do with that. And what's crazy, like we kind of talked about, the Vikings might be 14-2 or 14-3, and the Lions end up at 16-1 or 15-2, and the Lions are going on the road in the playoffs. Or not the Lions, the Vikings going.
The Vikings,
going and playing a 500 Seahawks team, or 9-8 or whatever, 10-7.
No, exactly. That is tough because if the Lions do hold on and win this division, obviously they'll get the home playoff game, but then the Vikings and the Packers will both be on the road. So the playoffs are kind of heating up. I mean, the Rams are back in this thing now. Here come the Dolphins. It took 1 week, but the playoffs now, there's more going on in the playoffs, I think people realize. And it always happens this way. The last 3 or 4 weeks, there's always going to be a team that just, craps the bed, and there's going to be a team that goes on a 4-game winning streak and sneaks in.
Yeah, the Bears just look so bad again. I did watch some of that game and we were following that on Twitter and stuff on the way up back home, and it was like you tuned in, and it was like 24-0 or whatever at half, and then it's just like Thomas Brown thought he had any chance to get the full-time job. I think that went away in the first half of the first game.
Yep, that's that was not a good look for him, and we'll see who the Bears try to go. The Kevin Warren thing's getting weird. Yep. I told you about that about a month ago.
Yep,
that's just getting weirder and weirder by the minute, but it's probably not going to change because he's in charge. He's been given the power.
Yeah.
So it is what it is, probably. Unfortunately, because there are some good candidates out there. Belichick, Vrabel. Those guys might turn the job down if they were offered it potentially for others.
Yeah, and that is not good at all if you're going to have people turn down the job. And
it's the Chicago Bears. I mean, Chicago is one of the biggest cities of America. It's a legendary NFL franchise. You don't want these all-time coaches or these candidates turning it down.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't blame them because they do have a reputation and they want to win and they want to set themselves up for good situations. And Belichick is, just I don't think he's involved in that, but he goes in there and he's like, I'm in charge and none of you guys matter. Poles and Warren, like, you're out. If I'm in, you're out. Or you could be here, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think if Belichick took the job, Warren would have to be out for sure, and probably Poles. I mean, most coaches, when they come in, want to bring in their own GM. So
right.
It's a weird dynamic in Chicago. Caleb's looked better the second half of the season. We've talked about that. But again, if you get this coach wrong, the next 2, 3, 4 years, it's going to be more of the same.
Yeah, I just shake my head. It's not good at all.
Nope. I hear you, and I predicted them to be one of the playoff teams. A lot of people did, and I'm kicking myself.
And they were on pace too. It would be interesting to see what the difference would be if that Hail Mary had not been completed.
Yeah, I think if that Hail Mary wouldn't have been completed, they'd obviously have one more win for sure. I think they'd probably have 2 more wins at this point, maybe more. So yeah, you're right. That Hail Mary it derailed everything, which may be a blessing in disguise, but
right. I agree. But that changed everything.
It did. It ruined the entire season. They could never come back from that one.
Nope. All right. Anything else, really, Trev? We went almost an hour and a half here. Another great podcast here. We enjoy talking and lots of stuff to talk about. Just one quick thing. Iowa State this week in men's and women's basketball. I believe Iowa is going to be favored probably by a couple points in basketball, but it's going to be, 2 teams are both ranked like 18, 22, somewhere in that area. I think it came out today, but I forgot to look. Men, Iowa State moved up to number 3 in the country. Tennessee's 1, Auburn is 2, and Iowa State is 3. And in one of the polls, Iowa State actually got a vote to be number 1, which I don't know. As we talked about that first half of Auburn, I don't know if anybody could beat them in that situation. They played really well, but in Iowa City on Thursday night at 6:30, that game is going to be tougher than you think. Iowa State, I do not think will run away with that one. They've not won in Carver in 10 years. And it's going to be a dogfight, and no matter what predictions say, anything else like that, it's going to be a dogfight. But I do like Iowa State chances. They are really, really good.
Yeah, in the men's game, I would definitely, not that I've watched both of them that much, but I would put my money on Iowa State, of course. The women's game, that's kind of a toss-up. I guess I'd probably go with Iowa, but,
I would go with Iowa in Carver. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I did notice too that those games are going to be I'm going to be on the East Coast this week for work. So those games are going to start at 9:00 at night.
Yeah. Yeah. The women's game is at 8:00 on Wednesday. Now I do think the men's game is 6:30. So that won't be as bad on Thursday. But so 7:30.
But I guess I'll have to be up late regardless for both those.
All right. Well, we'll talk next week, Trev, and next week we'll be preparing for the playoff. We'll have a little bit more take on some. I would assume some portal guys will have signed with both Iowa and Iowa State, and then a few more guys maybe not coming back, and perhaps some names that really matter. I know Iowa, the quarterbacks are all leaving. Iowa State, nobody that's left so far surprises. It's all people that aren't playing. So you can't blame them, and you go, and it's nobody that is changing next year's outlook so far. Now, that doesn't mean it won't happen tomorrow or the next day or the next day. But so far, I think both teams, nothing that's happened changes the team for next year. Obviously, Iowa, Caleb Johnson could have came back. That would have changed it. But in reality, everybody knew he was gone.
For sure. Next week, we'll get together again. Maybe we'll get Zach on here. And then what we need to do next week is we need to pick the opening rounds of the playoff games.
Yeah, that would be good. So, yeah, we'll do our predictions, and we'll see how it goes. And then, that weekend will be craziness that we've never seen before. So, something new that we've never ever seen, a 12-team playoff, and we'll go from there. All right. Thanks a lot, Trev, and we'll talk next week.
All right. Have a good night.